Mac, I have news. I have horrible news.
Really?
An Indiana judge has ended a year-long debate between a restaurateur and the country commission that ultimately ruled tacos and burritos are Mexican-style sandwiches.
So tacos, I agree on. I think a taco is kind of a style of a sandwich, as weird as that is to wrap your mind around. Burritos are a little different, because for the most part, I guess it could be an open-ended burrito too. But if you're thinking two ends, much like a wrap, that's not really a sandwich because if you call that a sandwich, then a calzone's a sandwich. And do you want to start talking calzones as Sammys?
I don't. No.
Yeah, that's a slippery slope.
I believe the
Oh,
true definition of a sandwich is meat between bread. So that could be a taco. That could also be a burrito if it's an open face like a slice of pizza. That's not an open face sandwich, is
I
it?
will say though, on the topic of calzones
Mhm.
as Sammys, my favorite types of calzones are those that
Hey,
are
Mac,
like
what are your favorite types of calzones?
they're the ones that are basically hot submarines. I like a steak and cheese calzone. I like a chicken parm calzone, I like a meatball calzone. That's how I utilize calzones as hot sandwiches, essentially.
Buffalo chicken calzone, spinach and
It's
cheese
less
calzone.
messy.
My mom, shout out Paula, makes an
Hmm.
amazing cold cut calzone, but it's heated cold cuts.
Yeah, so it's not cold anymore.
Oh, it's
Hot
hot.
cuts,
It's a hot cut sandwich,
hot cut.
but a calzone, hot cut calzone.
Yeah. Well, we just defined a calzone as a sandwich, so.
One, goo, three, yeah! Goo! Jaws three! Goo! King of Queens! Goo! Meryl Streep! Entertainment!
I'm Goo,
And I am Mac.
and we bring you Found Family.
We bring you a big old pile of cum because that's what this latest episode, these final 3 episodes did from this show, Goo.
I was gonna just ask what the percentage of episodes was that made you come.
4. I'd say 4 out of 10.
So
Does
40%.
that
I
seem
said
fair?
percentage.
40% cum rate for this show.
I would have to look at, I mean, it's definitely 40%, but it might be a smidge higher. I mean, episode one, and we'll get into it in a second, it's X-Men 97. But episode one, like, teased it, like, feathered you up, got you fluffed. Like, hey,
Yeah,
we're about to
I got
play around with
fluffed.
you.
I got fluffed in probably 8 of the 10 episodes. Don't get me wrong.
What's the what's the fluff percentage on this show?
It was 80% fluffernutter. The couple episodes I didn't care for, but overall, high percentage of fluff.
Mac, what are we talking about?
Goo!
Yes.
Today we are discussing X-Men 97. This is a TV 14 television program, an action, adventure, fantasy, and sci-fi. This had 10 episodes with a total runtime of about 4 hours and 29 minutes. That works out to be about 27 minutes per episode, which I thought was a good length. It
Yes.
was a little bit longer than your standard like 22 minutes, but
Mhm.
not up to your 45-minute episode length. And I believe the longest episode was the finale at 35 minutes. On Roddy T's Goo right now, 98% from the critics, 95% from the audience. If you'd like to compare that to the OG animated
I
series that ran
would.
from 92 to 97, that had 82% from the critics, 91% from the audience. So nary a critic has disliked this. I would say I understand why the original was at 82%. 4% of the audience liking this show a little bit more. I feel like if you like that show, you're definitely going to like this show. So that's like an automatic 91% crossover. And then you might rope in some more.
I think that this one being a little more adult would get it over that next threshold from like an A minus to an A or a B plus to an A.
Yeah, it definitely is. And that's a good point, too. It's not really a kid's show.
It's TV
And so
14. TV 14.
it's that's not an issue too because for the last 15 years it has been this like move towards adult animation and adult oriented cartoons. but this show did start as a kid's show. So
Yes.
that is a little bit of a
Well,
disconnect there.
it was created, the show was, at least. Obviously, there were comic books before. It was a Saturday morning cartoon show that was meant
Right.
to sell toys, and it did.
Yeah, like I don't know if this show is suitable for like a 7-year-old kid, whereas the original definitely was. You
I
know?
showed the first episode to my 3-year-old son. He wasn't interested. And by episode maybe 4, I was like, probably good that he doesn't like this show.
Again, I'm not complaining that it's
Yeah.
not suitable
No,
for a
no.
7-year-old kid.
I'm fine
But
with
I
that.
think some parents or some people might be of that
This
feeling.
show did what losers like me and you want from other properties.
Yeah.
And that is to have what we loved as a kid grow up with us.
Yeah, grow to its final form for sure.
No, but just
100%.
like as we are now adults, now make it for
Yep.
adults.
Exactly.
Mhm.
And that's sort of like when this original show came out in 1992, there was no real proof of concept for legitimate comic book stories and overall comic book universes. There was nothing really there. So in that meantime, in the 30 years since, or 30, what are we at? 35 years since? I don't know. Like
In the century since.
um obviously that has been proven right, and so now they're able to dump the budget into this that it necessitates, and also of course what we'll get to in a bit, how much the animation has improved over the years.
That would be the other part of it too, is that the animation in this is just in a completely other ballpark than what the original show was.
Yeah, at some points the original show looked like it was drawn by a blind man, so that was an issue.
Especially the last couple seasons when they said the budget's gone. You have to
Well,
use
the final
same
season
images
altogether
over and over
was
again.
like different animation than all the other seasons had been.
It
It
is
was really
ugly.
bizarre.
It's ugly.
Go on Metacritic. This has an 82. The OG doesn't even qualify. Not enough ratings on there, so this is out there. As you know, when we rate movies, 80 plus is pretty spectacular.
Mhm.
So getting this for cartoon is obviously quite a strong rating. Goo.
Yes.
This show, and this is a interesting discussion to have about the creator of this show. Created by Bo DeMayo. He was fired like 2 weeks before the premiere episode. And we still don't have a reason why.
Mhm.
We're going to praise this man a lot today. If it comes out he's a really bad guy, nothing we can do about it.
If it comes out that he is the worst person ever, what we said today, it doesn't count.
I still listen to the Ignition remix, so that tells you all you need to know about me.
It might be the
Goo.
best song of all time, though.
He was also consulted on the Armor Wars story and script. I still don't know if that movie is going to come out, but that's an
The
interesting
Armor
little
Wars
note here.
story that's not coming out.
And he was also an executive producer on this show, along with Kevin Feige, Louis D'Esposito, who has been like on a ton of Marvel stuff, and Victoria Alonso. This show was written by Bo DeMayo on 8 episodes. We would know him from not much before this, Goo. He did a couple episodes of that newer Star Trek show, live action show. 2 episodes of The Witcher. He did an animated Witcher movie, and he did one of the Moon Knight episodes.
No.
So really not a big resume leading into this, and I
Was
didn't
it
know
the
who he
good
was
Moon Knight
until-
episode? Was it the good
No
one?
idea. I didn't do that much research.
Because there was one really, really good Moon Knight episode.
But I'll say this, Goo. If it turns out he is a kind fellow, he's going to be getting whatever he wants going forward, because this show is of that quality.
And if it turns out he's a piece of shit, he has what's coming to him. Should we just do this for the entire podcast?
Yeah, we'll do two versions of this podcast.
I'm going to splice 2 different episodes. And when we find out what happens, I'm going to release the proper one.
The other writers on this season, Goo. Charlie Feldman did 4 episodes. You would know her from Fraggle Rock, Back to the Rock. She did 5 episodes of that. I know you're a big Fraggle Rock guy.
I'm not.
She was also a supervising producer on this show. Anthony Salitti, Goo. He got credited on 3 episodes. Those 3 episodes, you ask? The 3 Tolerances is Extinction episodes. So clearly he was someone they sought out to give us that 3-part season finale.
Yeah, he is a fella that steps to the plate 3 times and hits 3 grand slams. He's almost Fernando Tatis Sr.
And then one final writing credit here was to JB Ballard on 1 episode. This was the Bright Eyes episode. That's the unhinged rogue Captain
That's a good
America pops
episode
up
too.
in
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know why it was just one episode for this person, but it was. He was also a writer's room assistant on Moon Knight, so a little bit of a connection there. And of course, Goo, all of these characters were created by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby, so credit to them as well. And a writing note here. I I can assure the folks at home that season 2 was definitely written before this season ever came out,
Yeah.
which is a good thing. I don't know how much more than season 2 they have written, especially with DeMeo now not in the picture. So it seems like season 2 and season 1 are really going to be much of the same story arc, and that makes sense because I guess a small spoiler here: there's not much finality to the end of this season.
No. And if you think that maybe the storylines might have been rushed to get everything into 10 episodes, I'm completely fine with that because it was 10 action-packed episodes.
Yeah, they cut out the fluff. I very much enjoyed the number of episodes and the content length. 4.5 hours is essentially like 2 good movies. So I'm perfectly happy with that. And to note that the writing of season 2 is already done, that means we won't be in an Invincible type of situation where you get 2-3 years off and then you kind of lose interest. So
Well, the
that's
animation still has to, like, they aren't going to do it
Sure.
live.
No, I know, but I don't think
Great stress on the animators.
I think they had to do it all after Invincible season 1 because they weren't sure if that was going to hit or not, which seems dumb in retrospect. Go synopsis. A band of mutants use their uncanny gifts to protect a world that hates and fears them. They're challenged like never before, forced to face a dangerous and unexpected new future.
You
Pretty
would
good.
think in a world where there are other superheroes, these mutants would just be accepted.
Yeah, it's really interesting to see that like Iron Man and Captain America are just chilling with the president, and the rest of these guys are like,
Well, you know what it
trying to
is,
kill him every day.
and they kind of tease this towards the end. We're going to go spoiler free at the beginning. Is that you, as a human being, could give birth to a mutant, and that is something that some humans did not want to deal with. So they want to get rid of the mutant race to then not have that issue anymore.
Yeah, and a lot of this is allegorical,
Yes.
as it was from the original series, as the original trilogy of movies gets into. It deals a lot with essentially LGBTQ stuff in the 50s and 60s are a lot of what's echoed in these comic books, and that's really what a lot of these themes are.
Yeah.
Goo, this show stars, now again, these are all voice actors, so it's tough personally for me to like I can evaluate an actor on screen because I can see what they're doing. A voice actor, you can't really see what they're doing. You don't know what they're directing.
But I also love to see them behind the scenes doing their thing. Like, I'm Wolverine. That was me. He doesn't say that once. I swear, guys.
We did get 5 returning voice actors, technically 6, but a different character. So these 5 returning were George Buza as Beast. No issues there.
No, but also if you look him up on Google, he is exactly what you think he looks like.
Cal Dodd returns as Wolverine. Up and down through the season. Lenore's
I fell back in love with it by the end, or not fell back, but like I was in with it by the end.
Yeah. Lenore Zan, who was the original Rogue, whatever. She's back as Rogue. Probably my second least favorite voice of the season.
But from episode 5 on, I was back on board.
Not me. I did not care for this voice. If there wasn't for the one glaring bad one, I think she would have been the worst. Chris Britton is back as Mr. Sinister. Obviously, they're modulating that voice, but I love that voice. It's a great voice. Adrian Huff, Hough, is back as Nightcrawler. He was only in like a handful of episodes in the original series, so it was good to get him on board here.
Speed German.
And then Goo, a whole bunch of new voice actors here. Holly Chu as Jubilee, no issue with her. Ray Chase as Cyclops, no issue with him. Jennifer Hales as Jean Grey / Madeline Pryor. I didn't have any issues with her, but it was noticeably different. Much different voice than what she had in the original series. Matthew Watterson as Magneto. Tremendous job. And I thought
that's in the show. Best.
Not only is he the best character, it's a great voice. The original voice actors were not very good for Magneto, especially the first guy who was doing that sort of German accent type of thing. Allison Seeley Smith as Storm. She was there in the original series like halfway through, so she did some Storm. J.P. Karliak as Morph. This was originally Ron Rubin. I just got to say, what a great decision for the direction of Morph for this series. It was a nice little swerve compared to what he was before. Ross Marquand as Professor X. And Gil, I'll tell you what,
He
If
sucked.
you if do we need a new addition to the Decagon? His voice was bad. It didn't fit the character, and I think you could argue the original Professor X was the best voice from that original series. So I don't know what went wrong here. I don't know how he ended up with the gig, but his voice is distracting as
Could
Professor
they
X.
not find someone with a deeper voice that could pull you into the character? I found this voice to anytime that he spoke, I'm like, that's not Professor X.
Yeah, it just did not fit Professor X at all. I did not like it. It takes you out of the episode often when he's speaking, which is not
Especially the
great.
ones that were like so focused on him, or
Yeah.
even if it's a him and a Magneto story and you're so into the Magneto part of the story, and then he speaks and you just say, "Who are you, you bald fuck?"
Gil Birmingham as Forge had no issues with that one.
No.
AJ Locascio as Gambit, I thought was great and actually really felt like a Cajun type of character. The two original voice actors there, Chris Potter and Tony Daniels, were good, but I really like this new guy. Speaking of Chris Potter, Goo, they brought him back not as Gambit, but as Cable,
I like
which
that.
is pretty cool. Isaac Robinson Smith as Bishop. He also voices King
Ah!
T'Chaka.
Don't spoil the cameo. Oh, we already did
Well,
spoil a couple cameos. We're bad
yeah,
at this.
it's a cameo that doesn't
I
mean
know, but
anything really.
also, hey guys, if you want full cameo Easter eggs, whatever it is, we're not the people that you want.
Yeah, we're gonna get to that in a bit too. King T'Chaka's in this series for all of 7 seconds, so don't worry about it. And then last couple here, Gui Agustini as Roberto da Costa, aka Sunspot, pretty good.
Mhm.
Theo James as Bastion, Goo, tremendous,
Yeah.
great voice acting. And he also, I believe, is Australian originally.
Oh.
He's either British or Australian. So him doing this like really um strong English or a strong American accent as Bastion was just a really nicely done. And then we had a fellow named Josh Keat was Captain America for a couple episodes. And then how about this name, Goo? Well, I guess that's probably a spoiler. I'll
Yeah,
leave that
save
one
that
out.
for after. Save that one
Yeah.
for
All
after.
right. All right. All right.
So I'm thinking that we are going to do mostly spoiler talk. So should we just get into the octagon right now? Or the
Yeah,
decagon? How many
I think
legs are on this son bitch?
I think I'm fine with that because
Okay.
we have an awful lot to get to.
So first up here is fun factor, and I believe that every episode, outside of maybe one, gave you something super fun, like a battle, a use of powers, some teamwork, and this is just a fun show. But it's a heavy show. But the fun is what they do with the animation, I think.
Yeah, I had a lot of fun with the fight sequences and the usage of powers. That's always going
Yes.
to be really fun for me. Um, I do, I do wish there was a little bit more comedy or a little bit more camp, and I don't ask for that too often. But there needs to be a little bit more campiness with the X-Men. Morph was like the only person that provided a little bit of humor. We needed a little bit more of it.
Satisfactor, and I am wildly satisfied.
Just hearing the theme song every episode checks off the satisfactor meter there.
Oh, and also
Um,
speaking of the theme song, it was an evolving character along with the show, with previously on being who the main character of the episode was. The characters featured as the main players of the show changed
yeah, like the
every
title
single time.
sequence. Yeah,
The cutscenes between the characters changed every single time. It was like watching Game
pretty
of
good.
Thrones. Yeah.
um, this show is very satisfying. To me, it was more satisfying than it was fun.
Borometer. And while there were some episodes that didn't necessarily pull me in like some other ones, I don't think I was bored.
I was bored in one episode. Just in general, the Forge Storm stuff I didn't care about. And actually, beyond that, now it plays up later on. I really didn't care for the Rogue and Magneto stuff, although it does end up meaning a ton. The episode where Jubilee and Sunspot go into the video game, and then it culminates in the Forge Storm stuff. Couldn't care about that episode. That was a tough watch for me. It was not great. And that was like the exact type of thing you were hoping to get some like campy fun, and there really wasn't a lot of it in that.
I was
Nintendo
just about to
episode,
call you
so.
out for being a fraud, being a hypocrite, where you just said that you wanted campy fun, and the video
Yeah.
game stuff was campy fun.
No, it was a good reference. I just don't think they did it well.
I think they
Also,
did.
the Xavier stuff in space early on wasn't great either. So there were some misfires here in the first like 4 episodes, but obviously you can
Well,
almost
the
forgive it
Xavier
all by the
stuff,
end.
I don't know how much of a spoiler it is, but that was also episode 6. So that wasn't like the first 4 episodes.
Well, when they come back to it, but he does pop up, I think, in episode.
No, he doesn't pop up until 6.
Oh, all right, fair enough.
But either way, unless they pay off on that storyline, that might be one of the throwaway things from the season.
Seems wasted, right? Yeah.
But they might get back to it. We don't know. Aquator, is this better or worse than Aquaman from 2017?
Get that corn out of my face.
It is better. Mac, when life gives you lemons, you make lemonade. And who do you think stood out from this show beyond the people that we expected to stand out in this show?
Well, I guess I expect Nightcrawler to stand out when he comes on, but the original series had a severe lack of Nightcrawler,
Mhm.
and this Nightcrawler we get being like the energetic, maybe 18, 22. You don't really know how old he is, but every time he's on screen, he's doing something really fucking awesome. So I loved every time Nightcrawler was on screen.
I would say the character of Morph, because they completely changed it from what it was in the 90s show. Not only was he sassy fun, his powers were great every time that he used them. Just the references to other X-Men or superheroes from this universe and then using their powers, great.
Yeah, totally agree. I would say Magneto was the best character from the season. Morph might have been my favorite.
We just adapted, we just grabbed this one from the last movie.
No, you did.
Yeah, so like, was there any monkey business on this show? I think we get rid of this. I think we dump this one. I just thought of this off the top of my head. Mac, who was the X Factor on this show?
Is Beast a monkey? Is Nightcrawler a monkey? Couple monkey type things in there.
Triangle face monkeys.
I'm not going to answer this X Factor question.
Why? It's X-Men. Who's the X Factor of the X-Men?
You got it. Leona Lewis.
Leona Lewis. Who's that?
She won X Factor. Keep bleeding, keep bleeding love. Shout out. Well, that might have been 2007, 2006.
Mac, you deserve so much credit. And you know who else does? Unless he doesn't when we find out what he did. But Bo DeMeo.
Yep. I was a little more broad with the credit assignment, but it's probably DeMeo and the writing room in general here for turning the bad guy, Magneto, into by far the most interesting character on the show. And I think the journey that Magneto goes on during the season is why the season is so great. He's just like easily the best character on the show right now.
I mean, also, you just need to look at who was dealing with this show, this, bringing back a show from 20 something years ago. Who was in charge of making sure that this was handled so delicately and with love so that when you brought it back, it didn't feel like a zombified version of what it was?
Right. And I think that credit has to be assigned to Bo DeMeo for sure.
Because obviously we've had so many shows brought back, so many animated shows brought back, and you're like, this doesn't really feel like the original show.
Yeah, for sure. It feels like a parody in some respects of the original show. And that's why we'll get to this question at the end, but
Yeah.
I still want to tread lightly when we're doing adaptations like this.
Agreed.
I don't need 30 more of them.
I almost don't even need any.
Yeah,
I say
that might be right.
let's either find some new stuff or just let Bo DeMeo, unless he did something bad, handle some other stuff too. Pants Tent City, Excite Bike Mania. What from this show got you going? And for me, Mac, a very simple. Anytime the X-Men teamed up to pull off an attack, fucking great.
There were a plethora of half chubs throughout the season. Some notable ones: Jean versus Madeline. I think just the Madeline Pryor character design alone is a pants tent. Rogue completely unhinged later on in the season. The reveal we get surrounding the enemy or enemies was pretty good. The full pants tense Goo,
Yeah.
I would say at least 3. So maybe not 4, maybe 30% of the season, 30% of the episodes. The sacrifice that Gambit makes in the middle of this season. Yes, a bit of a spoiler, but it happens halfway through the season, so grow up. That sacrifice and what we see him do,
Like this show
fucking
tells you to
amazing.
do, grow up.
It's fucking amazing,
Yeah.
incredible. Something we had never seen Gambit do before. Maybe something we all wondered if he was capable of doing. And then Goo, there are 2 things that Magneto does in in episode 7 and episode 8 and episode 9 that were fucking amazing. That I'll save because I think those are really, really cool experiences. But basically everything Magneto does in the final 3 episodes is a pants 10.
For those of you tardy to the Mac and Goo party, we rate everything on a 40 hot dog rating scale. And Mac, from tip, starting with the theme song every single episode, to tail, where we are left off at the end of the season, there is no wasted time. This is just a tight story with animation that has finally caught up to its storytelling and shows off all the mutants' powers. The arcs of all the mutants, all the characters, they all matter. Everything felt meaningful and had a purpose. Magneto's story, best of the bunch. I cannot argue with you on that. And really is, because you need him for that sad grounding, and him who, obviously in the original show, they couldn't really mention the Holocaust. That was a huge focus of this, and using that for Magneto as his character here. I was moved emotionally several times. Did I cry? I might have cried once.
Oh,
I'll explain after.
okay.
It's a father-son thing. I get
Sure.
anything father-son. I get a little big
Yeah,
old
it's a bit of a
puss
drag.
bag now. I know, as a father, you wouldn't understand. The only bit of voice acting that I truly despised was Professor X. There are some other passable ones, or ones that I just accepted by the end. And there was a bit of convenience to a part of the final episode that we'll get to in a second that I thought kind of took away, and it was just there to keep things moving. But I cannot wait for season 2. It's my money and I need it now. Mac, I have this at 40 hot dogs.
Wow. Full 40 for the
40 hot
Goommeister.
dogs. This is the best Marvel show. It's captivating. It was week to week, much like the WandaVision stuff, much like Loki. I would take this over both of them. This is the best X-Men anything outside of Logan to me. I will hear an argument for First Class. And speaking of stuff from the MCU, I would have this anywhere from 4 to 7 if I'm ranking it up against those movies.
Well, the good thing, Goo, is my first point here. I really like that they kept it separate from the MCU. It's not a part of the MCU.
I agree completely. And I think what they also need to look at in this show is that you can do stuff not just in that timeline.
Right. And I think we all had this thought, even in the front of our heads, not even the back of our heads here, with Deadpool and Wolverine on the horizon here. We almost suspected a connection coming between this show and that movie, or this show and the MCU. We didn't get it. I'm happy we didn't. I'm happy it's its own thing. Reportedly, Deadpool was off limits, so they just want to keep this separate from what they're doing in the MCU. I think it just really worked out that way. Dude, to echo some of the points you've made, you can tell that this show was made by people who grew up watching the original, fell in love with these characters, and then became like A1 dorks. They dove into the comic books. They know anything and everything about these characters, and I mean that in the best way. I also really, really enjoyed that they cut out most of the fluff. Maybe you could have done an 8-episode season. That would have been great, but 10-episode seasons was awesome. I like, if this was like a 20-episode season, 16, 18, there would have been too much fluff in there. So keeping it succinct puts it on par with some of the better Marvel stuff we've ever seen. Those dork brains out there, combined with the strides in animation over the last 25, 30 years, gave us the show that these characters finally deserved. We get some real character building finally too, because that, like, as fun as the original show is, it really lacks some character building outside of a couple of characters. Now, this season really only builds 2 or 3, but it's going down that road where each character seemingly is going to be something we've bought into, and therefore what happens on screen is more emotional for us. So I really, really like that. I do think the emotional high of the season was that smack dab middle of the season Gambit stuff. So that hurts the end of the season a little bit, being that the end of the season is sort of not an end, and the highest emotional point was 5 episodes before. So hurts it a little bit. I also really don't like a couple of the voices, and in general, I was just fine with most of them. Only loved a couple of them, fine with most, hated a couple. So I don't know. Maybe they should have recasted all of it because some of the older people do sound old.
Yes.
Redoing the characters they've done from 20 years ago. But I guess you got to afford them the opportunity. Again, I thought the Storm storyline with Forge and her losing her powers was a bit underwhelming. It sort of just seemed like an excuse to get her out of the main story for a few episodes. So I didn't care for that. Again, didn't care for much of the Rogue Magneto stuff.
Sorry
Again,
to stop you right there. I think that might have been to help build Jean up by the end as well. So like losing Storm, I think helped Jean, but go ahead.
Yeah. No, that you're probably right about that. That's a good point. Again, I needed a little bit more campy fun, a little more laughs, not a ton. I just needed it spotted in there a little bit more because every time Morph quipped, it was hysterical. It was one of the best moments of each episode.
Mac wanted Bozo the Clown to join the X-Men.
I just needed a little bit more of that, a little bit more. That's all. So a little more fun, a little less fluff in the middle, a bit more of a definitive ending instead of like an open-ended thing here. And this would have been 40 dogs. As is, I think it does a great job setting up the next season, next 2 seasons. And I think like coming into this, let's say I would have been expecting like 32 dogs, 34 dogs on par with the original series. I don't know where it's really going to go. This was so good that that's now raised the bar. Like I'm expecting, because of this season, 40 dog stuff from the next couple seasons. This season, though, I think it was flawed. I don't know if they could have done it any better, except for maybe a couple things. But I got it like 37, 38 hot dogs. I could be talked up, talked down. It's just there was too many things I didn't like for it to be 40 dogs. Now the greatness outweighs the things I didn't like, but again, that's why it's at 38 hot dogs. So I'm looking at it a bit how I view the first Spider-Verse movie. Blew my expectations out of the water. It's forever up the expectations going forward in that universe. And it's building out our characters and provides like a perfect jumping off point. Like as a leadoff hitter, it was incredible, but maybe it's not our 2 or 3 hitter. So we're going into different storylines, going to be introducing some more characters. I think the potential going forward is like, it should be 40 dogs going forward.
Does this have to do with your prejudice against animation?
Yeah, that's like always a thing with me in animation for sure. But I think I'm not. You are too easily pleased, so we're back and forth on this.
Don't attack me.
No. So you're too easily pleased, and then I have a thing with animation. So like, if this was live action, it might have been 55 dogs. You know, like
we would have stopped the podcast if this was live action and we got this exact same thing. We would have stopped the podcast.
There is a disconnect with me and animated characters, but when you do it as well as you do it in Spider-Verse, or like you do with Magneto here, I'm able to buy in. But then when you have characters like Xavier taking you out of that fake reality,
I agree.
It's hard to get back into it. Yeah. So that's, again, my complaints are mostly nitpicks. They're not things that lampoon the season, but they are things that don't make it a 40 dogger for me.
40 hot dogs. Guys, head over to X, Instagram. Are you still on Facebook? Go to LinkedIn and just tell the world how many hot dogs X-Men 97 deserves.
Here's a good example. I think the last 4 episodes are 40 dog episodes. The 6 leading up to it, there might have been 1 or 2 40 dogs.
Can we spoil?
The rest were like 34 to 36 probably.
Should we spoil real quick?
Yeah. Spoilers.
So you mentioned not liking episode 4 with the video game stuff, but by the end of the season, Jubilee needs that growth / the powers that she learns from the older Jubilee.
She doesn't use those.
Yes, she does. She
Nope.
uses her ring light to cut Bastion's wings, and then she explodes his face.
With just extra strong fireworks.
No, she learns how to use it now.
Yeah, sure. That
What are
that
you watching? What are
Motendo
you
that
watching?
Motendo episode / Life Death Part 1 was not only the shortest episode of the season, it was the worst episode of the season.
I liked it.
That's why they put two ideas in there together. We're like, we don't really know where these things go. Here you go. I didn't care for that episode, and I forget. I'm getting them all mishmashed together.
Yeah, I
There's
kind of
another
had to fix
episode-
your notes earlier. You had things happening all over the place. I'm like, that didn't happen in this episode.
I don't think that's right.
No, I did.
My
I had to
notes were
fix a
good.
couple.
My notes were good. My mind is bad.
No, your
Um,
episode notes at the end. I had to move some stuff around.
Wrong.
I
Um,
did.
There was another episode that was in the first 4 that I thought was
That was in the
decent.
first 10. I get it. Yeah, they're all
But again, the last 4 episodes are 40 Dog stuff for
Yeah.
sure. Like it once Gambit is dead, the show's amazing.
I know, but you can't judge a season if there's like one episode that's like eh.
I
It's
gave
not
38 hot dogs.
No, you gave it 20. I heard you. You hate this show.
40% of the season was 40 hot dogs, maybe 50% even. That doesn't mean the whole thing is 40 hot dogs.
Why are you attacking me right now? I'm agreeing with you. I like the show.
Go. In the finale,
Yes.
we'll get to all the things that happened throughout the finale. Let's get to where the characters end up first and
Yes.
foremost. So Magneto saves the world, goes from villain to hero once again. And then all of a sudden,
Magneto, first off, throughout this season, he saves the world kind of like by
hero, villain.
no, but
villain.
like by showing in court that he's not that bad of a guy. He bought them some time. Then
Yes.
Genosha happens. He's dead.
Right.
Then he's brought back from the dead. Then he stops the world. He fucking he demagnetizes the world. And then he is once again a villain where they have to torpedo his asteroid. And then he's once again the hero. What a journey.
Him, obviously, the standout moment during the season was him ripping the adamantium from Wolverine's bones. That was fucking incredible.
There's a couple standout, so not only there was that.
Sure.
But-
I was going to get to the second one. Just off of that, it doesn't look as cool, but the idea that Magneto can basically just kill Earth by floating to one of the poles and turning off the magnetism of the planet is
Yeah.
incredible. That's terrifying.
Well, there's that, him pulling the judges and politicians into pretty much space to yell at them. That was an amazing scene. Him speaking German to that dying child. That was an amazing scene. Dude, we could do a top 10. Let's just be fucking Watch Mojo. Let's do top 10 Magneto moments from the season.
Goo. They
Yeah.
get poofed off into God knows where. And we're like, what the fuck? What's going on here? Because a big thing that DeMeo was saying during the season when he's fielding all these questions online and whatnot is that time travel is not going to be how this whole thing is solved. And he's correct, but time travel plays a fucking big ass role going forward here. So they didn't use it at all for the first 4 hours and 26 minutes of the season, but the last 3 minutes, it's all time travel.
I'll tell you what, though. For being time travel, which is usually pretty confusing stuff, that's pretty tangible.
Maybe. I don't need to get into the semantics of time travel. It
No,
doesn't
I'm
really
not.
make a lot of sense.
I'm not
but-
saying that I can time travel now. I'm saying on the show, it's decently easy to grasp.
Yeah, fair enough. Remaining on Earth, we have Forge, Jubilee, Sunspot, and Cable. Now, on Forge's board that we see when he's having that conversation with Bishop, we see that Jubilee, Sunspot, and Cable are listed as AWOL. So they're off. They don't really want anything to do with the X-Men or fighting anyone. And then all of the heroes that we see get zapped away are listed as missing, presumed dead.
Yes.
But the interesting stuff here, Goo, is Wanda Maximoff and Quicksilver are listed as off Earth. So they're still in play. We just have no idea where they are or when they are. So that's something to consider moving forward. And the active members remaining on that board, at least that we can see, are Colossus, Dust, never heard of Dust. I don't know who Dust is. Magic, who I think is Colossus's sister, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Iceman, who I think is the only Omega level mutant left out of these ones. Havoc might be Omega level. That is Cyclops' brother. Exodus, no idea who that is. Shadowcat, who just likes sneaking up on people, and Emma Frost. So this seems like
Shadowcat, who likes to be scared by buses.
this seems like they might be setting up a little bit of like an X-Force thing in the meantime on Earth while the X-Men, or in present day, while the X-Men are traveling through time. And speaking of traveling through time, let's get into so obviously Apocalypse is the one who sent all these people through time. I don't know how he's able to slice them and dice them up while they were all in the same place, but that's neither here nor there.
He's very powerful.
We see Scott and Jean in the future, 3960 AD, and we meet a character named Mother Ascani, who apparently is Rachel Summers, their daughter, at some point in the future. And then we see a young Nathan Summers. Now, are we to presume this is the Nathan that got sent into the future originally? Or is this a different version of Nathan?
Yes.
Okay.
And now in the final episode, Nathan, or Cable, he tells him that he always heard stories about his parents in the future. Do you think that it's his parents telling him those stories?
It might be, but that Nathan we see would have been like old enough to remember that.
No,
too?
but then also, if he's like, yeah, they all kind of sound boring, but that makes sense because it's Scott telling the stories and he's a boring fuck.
Interesting to note that they are in Egypt in that scene. You can see pyramids faintly in the background. And speaking of
aliens
Egypt,
built pyramids. That could be anywhere in space.
speaking of Egypt, we see Rogue, Nightcrawler, Beast, Xavier, and Magneto in ancient Egypt, 3000 BC, and they run into a young Apocalypse, whose name I can't pronounce. It's a 3-part name, something
Does Beast have to carry Professor X around the entire time in ancient
He should
Egypt?
wear him as a backpack. That seems like it would be better.
That's what I would assume too.
We see young Apocalypse fighting some armored warriors here, Goo. And I'm starting to think, and this has been pointed out online too, it's very a very known thing that one of the most powerful Kang variants was an Egyptian emperor. So do we see this 3000 BC that is being dominated by Kang, and Apocalypse sort of leads this uprising with these X-Men?
So I have also seen online that Bastion, who instead of taking Scott's hand to, be a part of the X-Men at the end, he gets pulled into that like gravity center that was holding up Asteroid M. And does he get pulled into a nowhere where Kang is?
Who? Say that again?
Bastion.
Oh, yeah. So we don't see what happens to him, which would be interesting.
Which,
and
by the
we
way,
did
so
see.
there's a bunch of Kangs, by the way, so they could all be going to Kang.
Yeah, and we did see in the original series. I think it was it Scott that ended up talking to a variant of Kang during the original series.
Maybe
Someone gets like lost in time. I forget who that is. Goo, in present day, we see Apocalypse on Genosha, sort of picking up the rubble, and in the rubble we see, I think it's the Queen of Hearts, one of Gambit's cards, leading the internet to believe that Gambit is going to become one of Apocalypse's 4 horsemen, most notably Death, which is okay.
Yeah, so I don't want Gambit brought back, but if they have to, if he's brought back as Death, that'd be cool. As long as
he would be Gambit representing Death.
But what I'm saying though, but as long as they don't eventually flip him back to just being normal Gambit. I don't want them to. Episode 5 has one of the best fucking endings where Gambit sacrifices himself to take out one of these giant crazy sentinels, and that death holds such weight over the final half of the season. If you bring him back, you lose that power.
I agree. I wholeheartedly agree with you. And that sacrifice is, and part of the reason why the sacrifice is so great is because he stayed dead for the rest of the season.
Yes.
They're like, oh, they actually killed someone we love. Gambit, I think, is on the short list for most people's favorite character always. So to kill a character of that popularity in an amazing way is truly awesome. Something we never see. So if you are going to bring him back, it's like,
well, like I said, do it as a horseman, but don't bring him back to real life. Like, don't make him Gambit again.
I agree with you, but I think if they do bring him back as a horseman, you're gonna see him back as Gambit.
Yeah,
I
because
think
then
it's
Rogue's gonna
inevitable.
give him a big old smooch, and he's gonna be like, "I'm back, baby." That's my Cajun accent, by the way.
Good, we
I'm back,
see,
mes amis.
as you mentioned, we see nothing about Bastion. We also see nothing about Wolverine, Morph, and Storm. And this is something I really didn't like. I didn't use this against grading the show. They don't mention where they are, and I think it's a decent little mystery as to where they might be. Instead, DeMeo went online and said that they're in one of the two timelines.
I don't
So
like that.
either in the future or in the past. And the internet tells us they're more likely than not that they're probably in the future with Jean and Scott. I was really hoping for we see this in the Wolverine where he goes to Japan and sort of takes up this samurai stuff. They purposefully show Silver Samurai in this show like 4 times for 1 second a piece each time. So clearly they're like setting that up, and Wolverine's the main connection there. So I thought they might send him back a couple 100 years and him like sort of do a similar storyline that we've seen before. And that was just bizarre to stick Silver Samurai in there so many times and then tell us that Wolverine's
He
not
looked
there.
cool
So
though.
again, we can assume Apocalypse is responsible for all of this. Now, will they have to fight him in 3 times, past, present, and future? So I'm very intrigued by that. I don't know if it's possible, but I'm very intrigued by it.
Thumbs up.
And then some other thing here. This is a character that I am only aware of over the last couple weeks. Cable has a daughter, Goo. Her name is Hope Summers, and apparently she's a super cool mutant. I wonder if she pops up since we're jumping around timelines here now, too.
How far into the future would they have to go?
I don't know. Presumably in the future where they're at now.
Oh, do you want to hear the part where I got a little teary-eyed?
Yeah, let's hear it.
It is when Scott and Jean are saying goodbye to Cable again, and Scott's like, "My father never did this to me, and I feel like I need to do this to you." And then he shows him his eyes.
Yeah, pretty
It was
good.
very nice.
Pretty good.
Yeah, and it was
And I
also,
like
off the back of it was episode 3 with the Goblin Queen when they sent him into the future because he was poisoned, and the future is the only time where they can cure it.
Yep. Which is
Yeah.
again, I guess that 3960 future, which is very far in the future.
Mhm.
Other things from this episode, Goo, and this might be the biggest thing looming large. Um, Again, Goo and I are ignorant to the comic books, but there's a character in the comic books called Onslaught, who is essentially the mind of Magneto and Charles Xavier together, and he's also like kind of a good guy. He's like sort of in the middle. He's not really a
I've heard he's a
bad guy.
bad guy. I don't know anything
No, I
about
think
this character.
I think
All I
he's kind of
know
in the middle.
is that there was an Easter egg where the radio station that was shown, the station was the exact date of Onslaught's original comic appearance.
Yeah, so it seems like they've been setting up Onslaught for the last few episodes. Seems like we're going to get that. And the idea is Apocalypse might be too powerful to stop, but when Onslaught arrives, enemy of my enemy is my friend, Onslaught might be able to defeat Apocalypse. So that'll be something interesting down the line. That's probably more of a season 3 thing, I'm guessing. We learned that Cable tried to go back and save Genosha 200 times, which is an awful lot of times to go back and have that fail over and over and over again.
I have come to bargain
You,
with you. Yep.
it's Dormammu. This seems to be a point of contention for you. This was a half chub for me. Phoenix
How did you know
stripping
what I was
Sinister.
talking about?
Phoenix stripping Sinister of all the extra DNA was cool. To me, of course, we haven't seen the Phoenix Force at all this season. We haven't seen it for a while in this X-Men show. To me, I've always believed that the Phoenix Force is always inside of her. So it's going to save her the way that the Hulk will always
And
save
look,
Bruce Banner.
it was in the opening theme song, I think, for every single episode. They would show the Phoenix, so you knew that it was coming eventually. But it
Mhm.
just came at a point where, the X-Men were down and out, and you're like, how are they going to get out of this? Oh, Phoenix is here. All right. Nice, easy
Yeah.
Deus Ex Machina, if you will.
I was fine with it because I think that she pops out when it's needed. There it is.
I just
Bang.
I thought it made things too easy.
All right, fair enough. I just love Phoenix. I don't know why you don't.
Well, so you love Madeline,
Mm-hmm.
you love the Phoenix,
Mm-hmm.
but you don't like Jean?
No, I like her evolved forms.
Okay. So you like I don't know any of Eevee's fucking things. I was trying to think. Vaporeon,
No, I don't like Vaporeon. I like Jolteon.
Jolteon,
I like the psychic one.
No, what's the fire one?
Flareon's the fire one.
Yeah,
Yep.
Flareon.
There's like 7 Eevee evolutions now. You're still talking
Ah.
Gen 1, but
I
Yeah.
only know 151, babe.
Jolteon's clearly the coolest one.
And when I say I only know 151, I mean I just blanked on all 3 of them when I was trying to say them.
Goo, we see Bastion go into this full like mechanized Bastion mode here. Looks an awful lot like Archangel, I guess, in the comics when
And
he
this
was
is
drawn originally
after-
like this.
This is after he beats Cable with his own arm.
Yeah, and then uses the future tech to juice up his armor, which is super
I wish
cool.
he said once, "Stop hitting yourself." That would have been a real nice line.
I loved his look. It looked like
Yeah.
a real cool badass villain.
And not only that, and I know that we already mentioned this, but when Jubilee like fireworks his face off and he looks like fucking Two-Face, that was
Yeah.
also awesome.
Some juices flowing a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah, he
that was
had like
pretty good.
oil. He was like the fucking Tin Man.
We see in this sort of I guess it's not a dream state, but when they're in Magneto's mind,
Yeah.
out lurking on a boat in the water there is Wanda and Peter. We see Rogue more prominently, which seems like they're overstating her significance. And then also Goo, a character named Polaris, who is also Magneto's daughter that I don't know anything about.
Yeah, I don't know a ton about her either. And I read that at first people assumed that she was his daughter, but then it was proven that she wasn't. But now it looks like she is again.
I would say based on that boat, the old floaty boaty.
Right. And I
oh-
also saw that so is it when you're in a dream and you have water, that has to do with like your world crashing down upon you or something? Is that what it is?
That seemed to be like how they were using it for sure. I don't know shit about psychology.
Have you ever
though,
dreamt
so-
about water?
Probably the last time I did, I probably pissed the bed, I'm guessing.
I think I only remember once truly dreaming about water, and I was drowning in my dream, and I woke up and I'm like, does that ever happen
Dude,
to
some
you?
other Does this ever happen to you? Goose, some other cameos in the finale. Silver Samurai, as I mentioned, they showed him like 4 times during the season. We get Cap and Iron Man protecting President Kelly, and I really liked that they did the 90s Iron Man, the campy Iron Man. Like that's more of the stuff I'm
Yeah,
looking
from the
for.
cartoon. It was nice.
We see Daredevil fighting crime in New York City, and he gets saved by Goo, Cloak and Dagger. And these are 2 characters I don't know shit about. I know they had a live action show. I don't know if it was Netflix or where it was. I think Keith was the only person on the planet that watched that show. We get Doctor Strange doing surgery. I like this Doctor Strange.
With
Yeah,
magic.
a little magic. So his hands are obviously still fucked up. So that's kind of cool. We see Goo, and this was huge. I didn't realize how big this was until it was explained to me by New Rockstars. So credit to EA Voss and New Rockstars. We see Peter Parker, not Spider-Man, and MJ watching this whole thing go down in a storefront in New York City. And apparently, Goo, I don't remember this. Maybe you knew this. At the end of the animated Spider-Man series, MJ was cloned and her clone dies. And that's the only reason why Peter finds out MJ was cloned. And so at the end of the series, he utilizes Madam Web to go and search for MJ. So this is telling us we have an answer here that Peter and Madam Web found MJ. So that's big.
Yeah. I think back to that scene constantly where Peter says we need to find MJ, and then Madam Web goes, Kung Pao chicken.
That's all good. Now I'm just picturing James Franco.
God bless you.
We get Black Panther, not T'Challa, but T'Chaka, his father, which makes sense given the timeline.
90s.
We
yep.
see Omega Red, who is like Russia's greatest warrior, along with Crimson Dynamo, which is a cool name. He looks like shit though, and Darkstar, who had popped up a couple times before. Psylocke we see back on Earth, so that's nice. She's there with like
we see some other mutants with her, by
yeah,
the way.
the little midget guy, Puck. That's right. And then the siblings, who is like North Star and something else, are there. And then we also pre-finale. Now you might remember more than I do. We also got Baron Zemo and Doctor Doom in some cameos, and I think there's a couple more.
Oh, we also got Killmonger too.
Yeah, you keep saying that. I don't think we did.
Just Google Killmonger X-Men 97. You'll see.
I don't think he's in there. You're the only person that has said that.
It was in episode 7, I believe, or 6. One of those
It's
two.
in the episode that Zemo and Doom were in, and I don't think he's in there. You
Yeah.
keep saying that.
He is. He's on one of the TV screens. They're all doing a big old
It
Zoom
doesn't.
call.
No, I know you say that, but again, he would be T'Challa's cousin, and T'Chaka is the Black Panther, so it wouldn't even make sense.
What if it's Sterling K. Brown?
He's not Killmonger.
It could be Sterling K.
All right,
Brown.
whatever. Goo, do you want to run through the episodes real quick before we get to any other final finale stuff?
Yes, let's do some episodes real quick, and keep in mind these might be off by an episode or two.
No, these are all good.
Yeah, whatever. Go ahead.
First episode to me, my X-Men. This was like the reintroduction, obviously, to all the characters. We find out that Magneto is now the leader, and there's this technology out there that is basically sapping mutants of their powers. They need to figure out why this is happening. Episode 2, Mutant Liberation begins.
Wait, hold up. As we go, let's stop for each episode. Episode 1, a couple of the highlights from this episode is we finally see Cyclops using his powers, like pretty cool wise, like him using his eye beam to like move around when he's battling and then take people out. We also get one of the best teamwork scenes of this show where Wolverine gets charged up by Gambit and then thrown into a Sentinel by Morph turning into Blob.
Yes, that is right. Again, more Morph.
And Beast is like, "Don't mind if we're friends, Mr. Sentinel." He actually does a good line at the end too when he goes into the Sentinel for a second time. He's like, "Those Greeks, they love horses."
Trojan horse reference, you know? Because
Yeah.
Bastion thought his pals were arriving. It was the X-Men. Episode 2, Mutant Liberation begins. This is where Magneto's on trial. They find out he's not a really bad guy, just a regular bad guy. The Friends of Honor, I think that's what FOH is, right? Attacks the
Yep.
UN for basically not killing Magneto. They didn't have a strong enough reaction to him. And then Storm either loses her powers in this episode or in episode 1.
She does when she's protecting Magneto.
That's what it is right there. And then anything else cool from this episode?
So first off, this one ends with the Madeline cliffhanger when everyone's at their everyone's down about Storm losing her powers and leaving. I would say that the highlights here, and most of my highlights are just sweet battles. The front of the courthouse when we have Morph taking on the FOH. Also, we have Wolverine driving Jean or Madeline to the hospital, and she's like, wow, she's like, "Logan," and he's like, "Apocalypse here." That part. And then also, I still love Magneto pulling the politicians, judges up into space pretty much and being like, "Look what you want me to be."
Right. I don't have to be this, but I will if you need me.
He's like, "I don't want to be this. You want me to be this."
Episode 3, Fire Made Flesh. This is where we get there's 2 Jean Greys. We find out that Sinister has swapped Jean Grey at some point during this show's run, which is still unclear.
Yeah.
They teased that Sinister was going to tell Cable when they were swapped in the finale or episode 9. They never actually tell us. I don't think we ever really need to know. I think that's a fun little mystery. And then Nathan's born in this episode as well.
Nathan was born in the episode prior. He's alive in this
Okay.
episode, but then he gets poisoned in this episode, sent into the future.
At the end of the episode, sent into the future with Bishop. And we also get in this episode an awesome Jean versus Jean fight where Madeline turns into this Goblin Queen outfit, and it's A1. It's a
Yeah, no, this is good spooky stuff. The highlight of this episode is when Morph says to Cyclops, "What would you do with $1 million?" And Cyclops goes, "2 Jeans at the same time."
Episode 4, Goo. Motendo / Life Death Part 1. This is where Jubilee and Roboito are in
Is that Bobby Boucher's dad?
Motendo for
It's me, Roboito.
like-
Be like that Tiger Woods and his daddy.
for like 13 minutes. We get Mojo, who was in the original series. I didn't care for this. You liked it. I liked the nod to the original series and to the video game, but I didn't really care for this.
I like the nods, and I like that she learned her powers.
Yeah, kind of. And then we also get the beginning of Forge and Storm trying to build Storm back up here to full Storm. It's just the episode's clearly like the worst of the season. Doesn't make a lot of sense.
That's because the rest of the season is so great. Also,
Yeah.
this one also gets a little bit spooky because of that big old demon
Good
bird.
point. There is a demon bird raven type of thing.
And I think Forge actually calls it a big old demon bird.
Episode 5, Remember It. This is where Rogue, Gambit, and Magneto are off to Genosha because Genosha is joining the UN, and all the other X-Men are staying back home in the mansion. And meanwhile, Scott is dealing with these like mental things, trying to figure out who was really Jean, who was Madeline, that whole thing. He's going through it.
And he's cheating on Jean with Madeline in her brain.
Real sexy cheating, little mental stuff. That's what all the women want, right? Someone
Yeah.
they can engage with mentally. This culminates in, first of all, them killing a ton of mutants was awesome, and then Gambit making that sacrifice was incredible. The end of this episode had the coolest feeling, I think, of the season, because you're like, oh, we had sort of been ramping up the stakes, and now we really did it. Now, like, this series is going to be great.
Yeah, and it has the speech in the middle of where Gambit believes that Rogue has chosen Magneto over him because she can touch Magneto. And that then plays into the final line of the episode of I can't feel you, where obviously she can drain power and stuff. And it's like he took it upon himself to be like, look, you always thought that you had to take care of me, but I can do this for you right now.
To me, that was the only real emotional moment of the season for me, was I can't feel you. It calls back to Wanda and Vision from WandaVision. It like, so because that relationship was built up and had built up for 5 seasons prior to this. It was cool to see something substantial happen to 2 characters we love. I got not cool to see, but it was cool to see them actually like do something that big.
Was that the best 8 minutes of the season?
That, and then probably when the X-Men are fighting Magneto at the end of episode 9. That's probably the best minutes.
You're right.
Those are the 2 there.
Are we watch Mojo now? Want to do the top 10 8-minute pieces of X-Men 97?
Episode 6. So this bothered me a little bit too, because we end episode 5 with that sacrifice, and then episode 6 we dive back into this storm stuff.
It's a palate cleanser now. It's almost like they said, okay, we know that you guys just fucking lost it for episode 5, which, by the way, episode 5 has been submitted for Emmy consideration, and I think it actually might win something. But then they said, all right, let's take a step back. Let's get back to Storm. She's going to get her powers back. She's going to switch her outfit.
I like her outfit.
And let's also bring Professor X back. And while watching the Professor X stuff, I'm like, I hope this means something, because otherwise it's like, you don't like the Mojo episode. I prefer that over this.
Yeah, 2 weakest episodes of the season, I'd say. I don't like, sure, fine. I just, this one was more annoying than the other one because we had already ramped up so much. So, but fair enough. I'm not going to argue with you about that one. This was like, the end of this episode is when he's calling out to the X-Men too. He says the dead Gambit and whatnot. It's just, I don't know. It didn't hit right. Episode 7, Bright Eyes. This is where we see Rogue completely unhinged. She's dealing with Gambit. She's no longer pulling her punches. We see her trying to basically find all of these extinctions as tolerance. What was the OZT officers or whatever the hell they were called?
Yeah, no, so she's going down the line to try and figure out who did this. And we eventually get to the end of this episode after, assuming that, well, and by the way, at the end of episode 5, we get the little piece there that like Sinister had been behind this. But then after that, he's just a pawn to someone else.
Right.
And that's Bastion.
Yeah, and Bastion's pretty fucking cool. He's just like a no nonsense villain, and we spend I don't know how many countless times talking about how villains like pull their punches, and we end up getting all these episodes and all these stories because the villains don't go full villain. Bastion is going full villain here.
Yeah, and Rogue in this episode fucking Marvel versus Capcom's a bunch of people and vehicles.
She throws Captain America's shield like 8,000 miles, which is awesome.
My favorite. That's my favorite part. It was
pretty awesome.
Fucking go and get your stupid frisbee, you little bitch.
And then we jump into the 3-part finale. Tolerance is extinction. part one, this the end of episode 7 finishes with us discovering that Bastion has created this human sentinel program, these prime sentinels, and in episode 8 they're fighting Bastion and all these prime sentinels, and we don't know
Oh, but
how the fuck they're going to stop this.
also episode 7 we learned that Bastion is a mutant and his mutant power is controlling robots, but also he was born through who are the two mute or the
So he's a
shit.
combination
blanking.
of Master Mold
Yes.
and I
Fuck, I'm
forget what
blanking
else.
too.
Yeah. So he was a mutant who like is also now a cyborg. He's both.
He's a cyborg, self-hating
Yeah.
mutant who does not refer to himself as a
Right.
mutant until the final
Right.
episode. He does not say us when speaking to the X-Men until his final scene. Up until then, he just refers to them as
So
freaks.
that's a nice little detail right there, Goo. The only way that we end up solving this, I say we, the only way the X-Men solve this is that senator lady whose name is escaping me, the blonde lady who we saw in Genosha, saw a couple times before, who people thought was a bad guy. She ends up being good. She frees Magneto from Bastion's like lair.
Which is also the first time that we see
You
his
see
wrist.
his Holocaust number. He floats up to one of the poles. I think it was the North Pole, but there was land, so probably wasn't. That didn't make too much sense.
He doesn't even see Santa though, so I don't think he went to the North Pole.
And he fucking, I thought he was reversing Earth's magnetic field. He just completely undressed Earth, dissolved the magnetic field, got rid of it, demagnetized the planet. And that was really cool in the moment. And then when the episode ends, you start thinking about like, well, wait a second. So, and Wolverine also says Magneto just declared war. Every plane in the sky fell out of the sky. Every ship in the ocean stopped working. Hospitals, nuclear reactors, all of this stuff is
Which
stopped working.
also then plays into it when you see Doctor Strange having to use, candles
Right.
and magic to do like an operation.
So he
later.
kills all these sentinels, but he also kills millions and millions of humans as well. So they don't really touch on that subject, by the way, the next couple episodes, like politics wise. That should have been a big thing they mentioned, that all these humans are dead.
But that does play into them going with the Magneto protocol, but it also then plays with the final piece of dialogue over the radio at the end of the show, where you have the other politician that's gaining on Kelly, and the politician is like purely anti-mutant, and it's because of what Magneto did that is getting
Yeah,
him
and in that
votes.
war room, the only two people speaking out against it is Captain America and King T'Chaka.
T'Challa.
Yeah.
No, T'Chaka, sorry.
Episode 9, Magneto.
By the way, time out. Can we just once again point out how fucking great this
Yeah.
show is?
Like expect like these last 4 episodes are something like close to 2 hours of content, and it's 2 great hours, incredible hours.
Yeah.
40 dog content over 2 straight hours. Episode 9, Magneto is sort of just basking in his glory, for lack of a better term, like taking it all in, looking out all the ships that don't work anymore. He decides to resurrect Asteroid M from the ocean, which he crashed in there in the original series and in season like 3 or 4 or something.
I don't think he crashed it. I think the team that he brought on to work with him, someone overtook it and then crashed it for him or something like that.
I think
And then
he
he was
crashed
a
it because
sad
it got
sack at the
over
end
to
of it.
something to that effect. Either way,
Yeah.
he pulls it back out of the ocean. And then the X-Men devise a plan here, a twofold plan, blue team and gold team, to go after Bastion and to also go after Magneto simultaneously. And their plan to save the world is only going to work if it all works out at the same time. Gold team and blue team got to hit it at the same time. That doesn't happen. Wolverine.
But this is also when we get the sweet line of Cyclops making fun of the movies and the black leather. Is like, well, what do you expect us to wear black
Yeah,
leather?
we see
That's the spandex.
we see
line,
some really cool callbacks to their, not their original outfits, but like their like Gen 2 outfits, which is good.
Yeah.
We see Wolverine pull a Thor here. Doesn't go for the head, doesn't go for the heart, hits Magneto straight through the chest, and Magneto ends up ripping all of the adamantium out of his body. Now, I did think it looked weird that the adamantium was like
It's
liquefied,
liquid.
But either
Yeah.
way, him ripping it all out of Wolverine's body was fucking incredible because
But that's
we
also
know,
yeah.
we all know he's capable of this. And at some point or another, we've all wondered why he hasn't done it already.
It's a gentleman's
Right.
agreement.
Right. And we see in Days of Future Past, he almost does it. He does like tie Wolverine to a block and fucking sink him.
Well, then in Days of Futures Past, he also or in the we're talking about the
Yeah.
movie, right? He says to him, "Wouldn't that be something if your claws were metal?" By the way, that's my Michael Fassbender. But also in this episode, uh, he does so the whole Wolverine thing happens after Charles calls him out first, and then he tries to get into his mind, and Magneto puts his helmet onto Charles and tries to crush his
Yeah,
brain.
that was pretty cool. And we were at the point where like I wasn't sure what was gonna happen. I was like, is he gonna fucking smush Charles right now?
He should have smushed Charles, right? And so while this is all not while this is happening, but like prior to this, you had Jean versus Sinister. That was a cool
That
little
was a
battle.
great
She
battle.
fucking bowling balled
This is
him.
the first
And
time
then
we've seen Sinister throughout the original series, and we've never seen him fight like this. This was the first time where we had recognized it before, but we were like, "Yay, animation!" Because Sinister fighting was
yes,
cool.
animation. But then after that, it's her versus not her son, because Cable still believes Madeline to be her. I mean, she is, she gave birth to him. But because in the finale, he does say, "This is my mom." But in this episode, he's controlled by Sinister, and he's like, "My mother was a world-class telekinetic," and then
Yeah, he finally uses his telekinetic power, and I
yeah,
had to look this up afterwards because clearly he gets it from Jean slash Madeline, whatever. But apparently he doesn't utilize it often because that is what
he has to use
to
it
hold
to
back the
control
techno
his
stuff.
illness,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, which is a
Yeah.
nice little wrinkle to his character. And then of course this ends with the Wolverine still, which is like ripped out of the comic book. Um,
I also think it would be so funny if there's ever like a little thing of Magneto just being like, "Hey Charles, can I talk to you for a second? You keep on bringing this guy here that I can murder him really fucking quick, right? Like his body is metal. That's what I
right.
do. Yet you keep bringing him here to tease me, being like, "Hey man, don't kill my metal guy."
It really is taunting him. And you could have like one has to wonder why Wolverine wasn't on the other team, the one not fighting Magneto. That would have made a little more
Yeah.
sense. But what are you going to do? The finale, we open up in Magneto's mind, presumably at this bar they've talked about and referenced a couple times from their past, from the first time they met. Xavier is trying to convince Magneto to reinstate Earth's magnetic field to save the Earth. Magneto outright refuses. And Charles basically just overwhelms them. And we get this shot back in the real world
Oh, that's
of
such a
just like a
great shot of him
solar
like pulling.
blast through Magneto's skull.
Yeah.
And the internet tells me that this is the moment that Onslaught is actually created. We won't see Onslaught for a bit, but this is like the incubation stage for him. This is what creates him, which is pretty cool to think about because it's two of arguably like the greatest or most powerful mutants there are.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know enough about Onslaught to get too excited
Yeah,
about
I
it.
guess that's true. Do you want to run through the rest of the finale?
No,
Yeah,
we
we already
did
did
we did
most
all
of
the
that,
cameos.
but yeah, I think we've mentioned pretty much everything we need to mention. So this was a hell of a season, and I'm like, as much as I like this season, I'm more excited for what's going to happen next season.
I mean, I'm unbelievably excited for next season as well, but I can still point to this season and the 9 weeks, because the first week was 2 episodes. The 9 weeks of every Wednesday being so excited to watch the show.
Yeah, I would say it was like 50-50 for me. Some of the days I waited till Thursday. I never waited like 2 days. But I didn't watch it right away every week. Not that like takes away from the show, but I guess I didn't anticipate it as much as you did until the last couple episodes.
And then also not to like knock some things down to build others up, but there were, I think, I want to say 6 of the episodes I watched more than once.
The only episode I watched more than once was the finale because I needed to like really
I
see what was
watched
going
the
on.
first, second, fifth, and then 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I watched all of those at least twice.
Credit to you.
I watched the Magneto courtroom thing like fucking 3 times. This show is just so
You love
good.
mutant politics. That's you.
I love diplomacy. I wanted them to talk about trade tariffs and embargoes.
Yeah, I wonder where they go from here because they're obviously setting up Apocalypse, and you can't not have Apocalypse be the main storyline for next season now. Um, but like, what is that? So, realistically, how many seasons of this show do you think we're going to get?
5, hopefully.
It seems like doing Apocalypse in season 2, it's going to be hard to get more than 3.
So I said this same thing to Fryer, and then he got really mad at me, being like, "There's a million fucking X-Men stories. They'll figure it out."
Oh, they could, but I'm saying like if you do 2 or 3 of the best like cartoon animated seasons you've ever done, do you want to risk
Yeah.
getting into stuff that we don't care that much about?
No, so I wouldn't say that. I think that we're already teetering on the line of things being too weird for a general audience to grasp. And if you go deeper into this stuff, people are gonna be like, "What is happening?"
No,
right
that
now?"
might be true too. You're right because we're working in 3 timelines at least going
We're
forward.
working in 3 timelines where you're like, "Wait, isn't he
Yeah.
dead?"
But at the same time, I feel like if you like this season enough, you're getting online and
Yeah,
you're
no.
looking up who the
No, but
fuck
I also
Mother Eskrin is or whatever the fuck her name is. Skani.
I also love the fact that the creator said, "This is a comic book show, and we are gonna be as weird as the
Yeah,
comics."
I enjoy it. And for you and I, it's a true delight because we have 0 expectations. We don't know shit about the comics. The only thing we
Yeah.
know is when the book boys tell us or what we Google. That's it.
40 hot dogs.
38 hot dogs.
Let's get into Max.
And Max could be anything. It could be a boat. And Mac, of course, with the resurrection of X-Men 97 or X-Men, the animated series to X-Men 97, I ask you this. Is there another cartoon or cartoons that you would like brought back and given the X-Men 97 treatment?
So there's been a beginning of not an outcry, but a calling for Spider-Man 98 in
Yeah.
rebooting that. And I'd be okay with that. We do have a lot of Spider-Man stories already and more coming. So I don't know if necessarily know if I need or want more
And
Spider-Man.
we have an animated Spider-Man show coming out, don't we? Like Spider-Man freshman year.
Yeah,
or
and they're also
something?
doing the Spider-Man Noir, so we're getting more of that.
That's live action though.
No, it's Nick Cage doing the voice.
Live action.
Really? Are you
Yes.
serious?
I'm very
You're
serious.
dumb. I didn't know that.
I've never heard you say that before.
I had to do it every time I did it without you because I didn't have the sounder.
I didn't listen to those episodes.
I want Goo,
Yeah.
especially because we're getting them next year on the big screen. How about revitalizing the Fantastic Four, giving us a little bit of that?
Yeah, so my answer would be, I guess anything in this animated Marvel multiverse, but it needs to be handled with the same love and care that this show
Give
had.
me what
And I don't know if they can do that because I've seen so many other shows from the 80s or the 90s brought back, and it just feels like a zombie version of what that show was. Take, for example, the Animaniacs that ran on Hulu. You watch 1 or 2 episodes and you go, this is kind of funny, but it doesn't feel like Animaniacs.
give me what Gen V is to the boys. I need that equivalent in this universe. It doesn't need to be X-Men, but something X-Men adjacent that loosely ties in, but is of the quality of X-Men. Give me something like
Okay,
that.
you know, I think I know what you're talking about. What you want is, you know how there's a presidential race happening right now on the show? You want us to follow the politics of
Or,
this
Gil,
world.
how about this?
You want 6 episodes leading up to the presidential election.
This might be the perfect medium for it. The New Mutants. This might be the medium for it.
I feel like we're gonna get something like that in season 2 for whoever either X-Force or the X-Men are.
All right. Well, maybe build them up in their own season, Gen V style.
Just build them up in the X-Men
Well, you
season.
could have said that about
Like-
Gen V, but it worked the way it did.
Because I will say that, like, if you do things right, like this was done right, this was done great. I also really liked the reboot series of DuckTales that came out like 10-ish years
Sure.
ago. That was a show that I watched with my
Yeah.
son when he was like 1 and he wasn't watching. I'm like, fuck,
Yeah.
DuckTales is great.
You just need to get him to the point where he's yelling, woohoo!
Oh no, that's all he does. Like he pays attention every 22 minutes just to say woohoo and then leave.
Yeah, like we alluded to, though, don't force it. Don't make this a trend.
No.
If it works, it works.
And that's what I love about James Gunn. They asked him like, "Hey, would you do the Justice League from 07 now? Would you bring back Batman?" And he's like, "We're not chasing trends. That's not what we're supposed to be doing. We should be trying to find trends."
Can't trust that man anymore, though. Yeah, I agree with what he's saying, but I can't trust him anymore.
I don't know if you've seen The Flash. It was the best comic book movie of all time.
Isn't it
I actually read
incredible?
I just
140
rewatched-
million for Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes to look that good, and the
Yeah.
Flash couldn't do that.
I was showing my son all of the scenes of when fast superheroes do cool things in movies the other day. So we watched the Quicksilver scenes. We watched Sonic, those scenes in the Sonic movies. And then I showed him the Flash putting the babies in the microwave. And I once again said, this is a bold swing. You didn't necessarily hit, but you put some effort and you thought of something that it didn't pay off, but we haven't seen this before. We haven't seen a hero put babies
Watching
in
that
a
in the
microwave.
theater was so confusing because I was laughing. I couldn't figure out if it was funny or if it was so ridiculous. But I was walking that line in the theater and I'm like, what is going on right now?
I was like, I like the direction this movie's going in, I think. This doesn't look good. This isn't a great
No.
scene, but we're trying
Hey, I hope
something.
Ezra Miller learns how to run one day. That's all I hope.
Or he's a bad guy. I don't know.
I hope he's not. I hope Bo DeMayo's not tied up in Ezra Miller stuff.
No, yeah. Once again, if DeMayo's a bad guy, we have disassociated ourselves from this episode. This is not us.
More like bad DeMayo, am I right? You can cut that in if he's a bad guy. Put that in every time.
At the end of every sentence, I'm going to splice that in. I'm going to spend 7 days making this episode just to put that in over and over again. All right, Mac, where can the people
You can find us on Instagram and on Twitter. That's the word.
Are you broken?
At Mac and Goo Podcast. Every other platform where Mac ampersand Goo, Mac Shift 7 Goo. That includes Facebook, Stitcher, TuneIn, Casper, Spreaker, Google Play, iHeartRadio. We're on Spotify, but more importantly, we're on Apple Podcasts. Get on there, rate, review, 5 stars. If you do that, we'll get you a free Mac and Goo t-shirt from the folks over at Watertown Sportswear. That's Watertown Sportswear on 34 Mount Auburn Street in Watertown. WatertownSportswear.com, expert screen printing and embroidery.
tpublic.com, merch. All right, catch us next week. We'll be doing Mac's birthday episode. Finally, look at those boots. They're about to grow roots.
Get one of my favorite sex scenes of all time.
Are we just going to turn into Watch Mojo and do top 10 sex scenes from 8 Mile?
If you could go back to 2006 and create a channel on YouTube, what would it be?
So like before everyone else did it? The Lonely Island.
All right, cool. I might go for Numa guy. Just get my 2 years of fame.
That was a good one. I'm trying to think of could I be Mr. Beast? Could I be Jake
Mr.
Paul?
Beast is 25 years old. He looks like he's 40.
Same here.
I'm the opposite.
Me and him were the same age. Just a couple of youngsters. Cracking wise on YouTube.
Oh, good old Mr. Beast.
What are other YouTube channels that have made money?
Well, I was thinking Watch Mojo, that type of shit.
Watch Mojo, they crank out way too much content. I couldn't even do that. And I crank out too much content
And they got 4
myself.
sub channels. They got Miss Mojo. They got all that shit too.
Yeah, and every one of those Miss Mojo videos is about Chuck Bass. I could do those ones, I guess.
Oh boy, we could have been the first podcast.
Top 10 times Chuck Bass looked at Blair Waldorf.
You know what I would have done? I would have done the JRE experience clips because that motherfucker puts up 15-minute Joe Rogan clips and gets millions.
No, but
of
so
views.
does he? But does he get the views or does Joe Rogan?
Well, I
get the
think it
views?
started as a third party doing it, and I think it's all roped up and together now.
Yeah, because that's illegal. You can't steal someone's shit and post it as your own.
I don't think he was claiming it as his own, but maybe YouTube was paying him as such.
Yeah, that's what I
Yeah.
mean. That's
Yeah.
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 So so
Or it could have been Rogan
You're asking
it
me-
could have been Rogan from the beginning. I don't know.
you're asking me like, oh, what creative things would you want to do? And you're like, I would be the person that stole someone else's shit and posted it to
Bam.
YouTube.
Figure it out.
I would have, you know what I would have done? I would have created Cocomelon. That started on YouTube,
it?
right?
Bluey?
Nah, that might be Netflix. I don't know. There's a lot of YouTube
All right.
shit.
See you later.
All right, bye. Tuesdays or Goose Days, I abused kangaroos. Tim Burton.
Please flip the cassette over to side B to continue the adventure.